So I admit there are videos that I need to be working on the other cases that I'm covering, but I keep getting drawn back to Maddie. And I know that that is largely because of the sense of betrayal that we all feel. That the justice system betrayed Maddie after everyone else betrayed her, and we had hoped that the justice system would have done the right thing by her, and it feels like a betrayal. That no contest plea feels like a betrayal. To me, that should never have been allowed. And I'm still really angry. And I'm angry all round. I'm angry with the judge. I'm angry with the prosecution. I'm angry with Maddie's family, who didn't stand up and say, no, that's not acceptable to us. And of course I'm angry with Stearns because, well, the no contest plea and of course the disgusting speech that he made. So I keep coming back to Maddie. And I found myself becoming curious about what Stearns would be experiencing at the Central Florida Reception Centre. So I did a bit of research and I thought I'd share it with you because maybe there's other people, well, I would imagine there are other people who still feel as angry as I do and may take a small amount of reassurance from this information. Now, this is just a portion of a paragraph explaining what happens when prisoners are checked in, essentially. And it says, after relinquishing their personal property, inmates are issued clothing and a haircut. And we saw how that went for him. Are fingerprinted and photographed and receive an initial medical examination. The remainder of the 5-day reception process is used to conduct tests and interviews to help the facility assignment decisions. Inmates are transported to their permanent facilities within 5 to 6 weeks. So he's essentially going to be in limbo for anywhere up to the next 6 weeks. Now, a few things that need to be acknowledged here. He didn't show up onto the system till the 23rd, which basically means that he didn't get any, they couldn't even begin to give him any of his previous privileges, as in email, commissary, phone, any of that. And even then, it's going to take longer. It'd probably take about a week before he can access any of those. So he gets to sit there in isolation for the first week, unable to contact mummy and daddy and tell them how miserable he is, unable to get any of his bloody, what are they called, the root beer barrels, probably unable to access his books. I would imagine that transfer of his property is also something that takes a bit of time, meaning that he's going to have at least 2 or 3 days where he has none of his property, no access to outside communication, no access to his root beer barrels, relying on basically prison food. So I hope he felt really miserable. And I hope it takes a while for him to get his privileges set up, because I do like the idea of him being in isolation and unable to communicate even with his parents. And yes, I know there is a creator who's claiming that she had communication with him the evening after he made his plea. I'll let you apply your own logic and critical thinking to that to decide whether or not it's likely, given what I've just told you, that she did have communication with him directly after his plea, or that perhaps it is just a fabrication. Now, I found a few videos that I thought you might appreciate.
What is confinement like in Florida prison? Let me tell you, all around it fucking sucks. You got 3 levels of confinement in the state of Florida. You got administrative confinement, which is like when you're under investigation. Disciplinary confinement, after they find you guilty after said investigation. And then you got CM, which is closed management. You've been either acting a donkey or did something so serious that they even want to separate you from regular prison compounds.
So, as you've probably seen, Stearns is currently classified as administrative confinement. But obviously, when they've finished going through all their testing and everything, so maybe by next week, he will then be classified as closed confinement because he is the lowest of the low. And I can guarantee that even in the reception centre, there's going to be people keeping an eye on him very closely.
Now, believe it or not, confinement is a source of a lot of problems. I'm not just talking about the isolation factor or being alone for that much time. I'm talking about the fact that a lot of times I've seen opposing gang members put in the same cell in confinement. Other times they'll put somebody who's a real problem child in the room with a sex offender just because the officers want to keep their hands clean, but at the same time they want to get rid of a problem. Now, if you really put a target on your back or continue to be a problem, that's when closed management comes in. And being on CM usually means that they're going to transfer you to a fucked up camp with some nasty ass COs and guards. Many a time I've seen the COs just antagonizing inmates behind the door just because they were either having a bad day or a bad life and decided they wanted to take it out on you.
Now, I can't tell exactly how old that video is. I'm still not a master of TikTok, so I downloaded it and I didn't think to check what the date was on it. But that's a little bit reassuring to know that he's not going to have a happy time. And like I said, for at least the first week, he's not going to have any of his privileges that he relies so heavily on to get him through each day.
In Florida, once you've been sentenced to the Department of Corrections, you go to a place called the reception center. And in the reception center, it is the worst possible time you could do. If you're in the winter, you're freezing. If you're in the summer, you're burning up. There's 75 dudes sucking up all the cold air, all the fresh air. You have to wait to put your phone list in to even call anybody, and your account for commissary ain't set up for a week or two. You are literally just sitting there. You don't even have shower slides to get in the shower unless you know somebody.
I don't know how the shower side of things works for him being in confinement, but I don't think he would really care if he's not getting showers. But it's encouraging to know that climate-wise, it's not a great experience, and I really hope that we get a bit of a heat wave in the next week in Florida.
I mean, it's hard time. If anybody had a different experience, let me know.
And finally, while this is several years old, I'm pretty certain that things aren't going to have changed a lot since 2019. So this is an article from a thing called the Phoenix Flyer, and it says corrections officials investigating another severe inmate beating by prison guards. And the reason this article stood out to me is because it is actually at the Central Florida Reception Center. So the Florida Department of Corrections is investigating what's been described as a severe assault by prison guards against an inmate who is the former brother-in-law of a state lawmaker. The beating left the prisoner with a broken jaw, broken nose, broken cheekbone and fractured eye socket. Carlton Hart, 51, was allegedly assaulted by 4 prison guards last week, July 23rd, at the Central Florida Reception Center in Orlando, after he complained about a corrections officer cutting him while removing plastic handcuffs from his wrists as he was being taken for a dental visit. Now, this would have made the news because of the guy's connections. If he is the former brother-in-law of a state lawmaker, then obviously there's connections there that make it possible for him to complain about it and draw attention to the fact. So I would imagine that A, it probably has not stopped, and there probably still are these sort of occurrences that occur, and B, we don't hear about a lot of them because most of the inmates don't have connections to make it into an issue. Interesting that this guy was basically beaten for complaining, because that's pretty much all Stephan ever does. And let's be real, even if they have cleaned house since then, this shows you the sort of attitude that guards have towards inmates. in the system there. Stearns isn't going to be making any special friends while he's at his little temporary accommodation. And like I said, he can't even complain to Mummy and Daddy about it until they get him set up with his privileges again. So it was just a quick one. I thought a few people might find this interesting. Maybe it gives you a little bit of reassurance after his little speech the other day. And let's hope that there is justice in Stephan's future.
I've been to wonder